Okay, so you're online, right? Like checking your bank balance or maybe posting on social media or researching something you want to buy feels pretty private, right?
Right.
But what if I told you that pretty much everything you do online is being constantly scanned and copied? Like all this activity is being used to teach AI, artificial intelligence,
hmm
to teach AI how to think like a person, how to act, even how to sound just like you.
It's wild, isn't it?
So today we're diving deep into the world of AI data siphoning.
Yeah, and it's a big one. It's it's sometimes called deep seek siphoning.
Oh, haven't heard that one.
Yeah, deep seek. Basically means that it's the same thing. It refers to the mass harvesting of online content to train AI models.
Yeah.
You can kind of think of it like a huge ongoing digital
Uh-huh.
intake,
Yeah.
you know. And we are just now starting to really understand what it all means.
And yeah, this is not some sci-fi future thing. This is happening right now.
Right,
Right now.
wow.
Like right now as we're talking.
Exactly.
This is about you. Whether you're an individual just browsing the web or if you run a business, especially in North America and Canada or the US.
Yeah. That's where a lot of this is happening. A lot of the development, a lot of the siphoning.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try to figure out how all this works, how this data siphoning happens.
The nuts and bolts?
Exactly, the nuts and bolts. But also how it impacts businesses, like what's the actual effect?
Uh-huh.
And, we got to talk about the risks too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially all these AI-powered scams that are popping up, it seems like everywhere.
Everywhere. And they're getting harder to spot.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we're going to talk about what you can do to protect yourself.
Because there are things you can do.
There are. There are. Now, in doing the research for this episode, for this deep dive, we found that this training data, the stuff that feeds the AI beast, comes from, well, pretty much everywhere you can think of online. Websites, of course, but then forums too, all those little communities online. Social media, well, that's a huge one.
Huge.
And then these giant online libraries full of text and images and videos, even computer code. And then, we have APIs.
Like the connections between systems.
Yeah, like the digital connections that allow different systems to share info.
Uh-huh.
And then you have these partnerships between different data companies.
Data brokers and all that.
And of course, we can't forget all the stuff that users create, the user-generated content, all those social media posts and reviews and photos and videos and comments. It's a lot. It all ends up feeding this AI engine. So how does it actually work? How do they get this information?
Well, one of the main ways is called web scraping, but it's, not like your typical Google search. This is on a whole other level. It's way more sophisticated. They use these really advanced web crawlers that are specifically designed to just collect huge amounts of data, like from everywhere. Websites, forums, social media, you name it. They're going after it.
So these things are like going beyond just indexing pages. They're like grabbing the actual content.
Exactly. Extracting and archiving it. The text, images, videos, everything that an AI model needs to learn and improve.
Huh.
And this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a little worrying. Dr. Aliana Chen, a cybersecurity expert based in Toronto, says that a lot of business leaders, like a lot of them, have no clue that all their online content, like the stuff they work hard to put out there, product descriptions, testimonials, technical manuals, it's being harvested every single day to train AI systems for their competitors.
So they don't even know.
Nope, no notification, no compensation, nothing.
That's kind of a big oversight, isn't it? Like they put in all this work and someone else is just benefiting from it.
Yeah, it's a big blind spot. And it really raises some questions about how we think about digital ownership in this day and age. And it's not just about these crawlers. AI developers also get access to data through these things called APIs. They're like digital doorways that let different programs share data.
Okay.
They also partner up with, data brokers, those companies that collect and sell information, and even social media platforms themselves. It's a lot of backroom dealings, and a lot of times the people who made the data in the first place, you and me, have no idea where it's going.
So it's not always, some secret bot sneaking around.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more like a deal being made that nobody sees.
Exactly. And user-generated content, that's a gold mine. All the social media posts, reviews, photos, videos, comments, it's full of personal experiences and preferences, even things like facial features in photos, voice patterns in videos.
So let's talk about the impact on businesses. If your information is being used to train your competitors' AI, that's got to be a problem, right?
Huge problem. One of the big ones is intellectual property. Companies spend a ton of time and money developing original content, whether it's for their website, marketing campaigns, technical documentation. And if that gets siphoned off and used to train AI, well, it's basically giving your competitors a free ride.
Yeah, we actually came across a real example of this. Marcus Williams, he's the CTO of a tech firm in Vancouver, told us that he found parts of their product documentation, word for word, in content that was generated by a competitor's AI.
Wow.
So basically, the competition was benefiting from their R&D without doing any of the work.
Exactly. And that's a huge disincentive for companies to invest in new ideas. If their work can just be copied so easily, why bother? And beyond IP, there are all these compliance issues.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, data protection laws are constantly changing. You have PIPEDA in Canada, Bill 64 in Quebec, and a bunch of different laws in the U.S. If a company's customer data gets siphoned and used for AI training without the proper consent, they could face some serious legal trouble.
Oh, wow.
And the rules around all of this, adequate security, transparency, they're still being figured out.
So it's kind of a legal minefield?
Pretty much. And then there's this straight-up competitive disadvantage. If everyone in an industry can just scoop up public data to train their AI,
Yeah.
it kind of levels the playing field, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
It hurts the companies that have invested in building their own unique data sets.
So we've covered how data siphoning works and how it affects businesses, but there's this whole other side to this, the AI-powered scams. It's like the dark side of AI.
Yeah, and it's getting scarier by the day. This same data that can do so much good can also be used by bad actors to create these really believable scams.
And they're good at it.
Oh yeah, scary good.
Like, one thing that really stood out in the research was voice cloning.
Oh yeah.
You're telling me they can create a perfect copy of someone's voice.
Pretty much. All they need is a small audio sample, like from a video, a podcast, even a social media clip, and they can make it sound exactly like that person.
So, like, how much are we talking about?
We spoke with Raymond Ortiz. He's an expert in fraud prevention, and he said that his firm saw a ton of attempts at executive voice clone fraud just in the last quarter, and these were targeting Fortune 1000 companies.
Seriously?
Yeah, and in the cases where it worked, the average amount they stole was $285,000.
That's insane. Okay, so how do they do it? What's the usual play?
It usually starts with a phone call, supposedly from the CEO or the CFO to someone in the finance department. They'll ask for an urgent wire transfer, something confidential. And they'll make up some reason why they need to bypass the usual procedures.
Right, like some emergency.
Exactly. And they'll put a lot of pressure on the employee, make it seem super urgent so they don't have time to double check.
So they're using technology and psychology, basically.
Yep. Exploiting the fact that people want to please their bosses and they don't want to mess things up.
Man, that's messed up. And it's not just voice cloning, right? There's more.
Oh yeah, there's personalized phishing. We all get those spam emails. But AI can make them way more sophisticated. They can analyze all the data they've collected and craft messages that reference specific projects, colleagues, even recent events.
Like really personal stuff.
It's creepy how personal they can get.
Oh.
We spoke with Jennifer Kim. She's a cybersecurity analyst, and she said she's seen phishing emails that mention specific internal meetings, mimic someone's writing style, even arrive at very specific times to make them seem more legitimate.
Wow, that's way beyond just putting your name in the subject line.
For sure.
So how does this personalization actually make the scams more effective?
It creates this sense of familiarity. You think, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They must be legit. And when the details match up with your real experiences, you're less likely to be suspicious.
Right, it all seems real.
And AI is also making social engineering way more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Social engineering is basically tricking people into giving up information. Well, AI can analyze data to figure out a company's structure, the relationships between employees, their communication styles, even individual vulnerabilities. So they can really target their attacks.
It's like they're building a whole intelligence profile. This is getting kind of scary, especially when we start thinking about what this means for us as individuals.
Yeah, it's not just businesses that need to worry.
So what does all this data siphoning mean for our digital footprint, for our security?
Well, one big concern is what we call identity projection. AI can take all your social media posts, online activity, even public records, and use it to create a model of your future behavior, your preferences,
Yeah.
even where you're likely to be at a certain time.
That's kind of freaky.
It is. And it makes identity theft way easier. It makes all sorts of scams way more believable. Thomas Morrison, he's a privacy advocate, he said that AI can basically fill in the blanks in our digital lives. Even if we've only shared little bits of info here and there, AI can connect the dots and build a really detailed picture of us.
That's unsettling.
And here's the kicker. Data that's used to train AI, it often becomes permanently embedded in the model. So unlike a database that can be updated or deleted, once your info's been used to teach an AI, it's pretty much impossible to remove it.
So even if I delete my old social media posts, that stuff could still be out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a digital ghost. And then there's cross-platform correlation. They can combine data from all sorts of sources to create these incredibly detailed profiles. Even if you try to keep your accounts separate, they can figure out it's you.
Okay, so we need to talk about laws. Is anyone trying to control all
Yeah.
this?
Well, the law is still trying to catch up, to be honest. In Canada, we have PIPEDA, but it's not entirely clear how it applies to data that's scraped from public sources.
So there's a loophole.
Kinda, yeah. Now, Quebec's Bill 64 is a bit more specific. It came into effect last September, and it requires organizations to do privacy impact assessments for AI systems and be more transparent about how they're using personal data.
So that's the step in the right direction.
It is. And what about the U.S.?
Yeah, what about down south?
They don't have a federal law specifically for AI training data, so it's kind of a mess of state laws. California has the CCPA and the CPRA, which give residents some rights regarding their data, including the right to know how it's being used, which could apply to AI training. Then you have Illinois, which has BIPA, that requires explicit consent for the collection of biometric data like facial scans.
It's all over the place.
It really is. But the good news is more and more states are looking into creating AI-specific laws, especially around disclosure.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. What can businesses actually do to protect themselves from having their data siphoned?
Well, there are a few things they can do. On the technical side, they can use robots.txt files, which tell web crawlers which parts of their site to avoid, but it's voluntary, so not everyone follows it. They can also use CAPI-TCHAs and rate limiting to make it harder for bots to scrape their data.
Okay.
And for visual content, they can use digital watermarks to track ownership. There's also this thing called dynamic content loading, which makes it harder for bots to extract information.
Interesting. What about from a legal standpoint?
They should definitely update their terms of service to specifically ban data scraping and using their content for AI training. And when they're working with partners, they need to have really clear agreements about data usage, specifically saying it can't be used for AI training without permission.
Makes sense.
And registering copyrights can help protect their original content. And they should keep good records of how their content was created, to prove ownership.
So it's all about covering your bases.
Exactly. And then there's operational security.
Oh, right, inside the company.
Exactly. They should do these tests, like AI impersonation tests, to see how vulnerable they are to scams. They could use multi-factor authentication for all their financial transactions, and they need to train their employees on how to spot these scams. And having backup communication channels for confirming important requests can really help.
Okay, so that's a lot for businesses to think about. But what about us regular folks? What can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, good digital hygiene is key. Check your privacy settings regularly. Be careful about what personal information you share online. Maybe use a different username for some things. And think twice before sharing biometric data, like your voice or face.
So just be more aware.
Exactly. And set up some verification protocols. For example, you could have a code word with your family for important requests, or always call back to verify financial requests. And if something seems too urgent or pushy, be suspicious. Don't let anyone pressure you into doing something you're not comfortable with.
Good advice.
And, stay informed. Keep learning about the latest scams and how to spot them. Remember that anything you put online can be collected and used for AI training, maybe even years later.
It's kind of scary to think about.
It is. And we all need to advocate for stronger privacy laws and hold companies accountable.
So looking ahead, where do you think all this is going?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more regulation, both in Canada and the U.S. There's going to be more pressure for laws that specifically address AI training data, maybe requiring explicit consent, more transparency about how data is used, and maybe even the right to have your data removed from AI systems.
That would be great. What about technology? What do you see happening there?
It's going to be a constant arms race. We'll see more sophisticated data scraping techniques, but also better AI detection tools that can spot fakes. Blockchain could become more important for verifying content, and we might see more federated learning, where AI is trained on data that's spread out instead of in one giant database.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not necessarily. The market might also come up with some solutions. Like, imagine platforms that pay you for using your data to train AI, or premium AI services that only use ethically sourced data, Or maybe data provenance services that help you track where your data goes. We could even see insurance for AI impersonation and data breaches.
That would be interesting.
It would.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I think the main takeaway here is that AI data siphoning is a really big deal, and it's something that affects all of us.
It does. We all need to be aware of it, take steps to protect ourselves, and keep pushing for better regulations.
And on that note, I'll leave you with this thought. You know, so much of our lives are online now. What happens when all that data, our digital footprint, is used to train AI in ways we can't even imagine right now?
It's something to think about.
It is.
It really is.
Okay, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.